The story kicks off with Hiro-san, the girl everyone admired the most in class. She was known as the school's beauty, and for one particular boy, seeing her for the first time was enough to steal his heart. His feelings had grown so strong that keeping them hidden was no longer possible. Before he could even think twice about it, he had already made his move. Nervously gathering his courage, he slipped a love letter into her locker. To him, it felt like the only way he could honestly tell her how he felt. Unfortunately, his confession was crushed almost instantly. The very next day, the answer arrived, and it wasn't even Harrison who delivered it. Instead, one of her friends approached him. Holding the very letter he had written, she called him over with a stern look on her face. She explained that Harrison wasn't comfortable with situations like this at all. Left alone in the empty classroom, he sat there with a broken heart. He tried convincing himself that he had expected this outcome from the beginning. After all, Hiro-san was adored by everyone and stood at the very top of the social ladder. Meanwhile, he was just a reserve player on the baseball team, someone he considered completely ordinary. He never imagined she would even know who he was. Even so, knowing the odds hadn't made the rejection hurt any less. At that moment, he noticed her walking outside with her friends. The sight of her only deepened the pain. As he stared, a single name echoed through his thoughts. Hiroe-san. Without warning, Hiroe-san's friend returned and slammed her hand onto his desk. She demanded to know why he was still dwelling on it after already being turned down. Calling him pathetic, she told him to stop staring at her friend with those watery eyes. The boy, Sonaki, could only nod and quietly say he understood, addressing the girl by name, Ichizono. Trying to avoid further embarrassment, Sonaki packed up his belongings and prepared to leave. He assured her that he wouldn't bother Hiroisan anymore. Ichizono simply watched as he rushed toward the door. Just as he was about to leave, she suddenly called out to him and told him to wait. She then criticized the way he had confessed, saying that using a love letter was far too timid. If he truly wanted to win a girl's heart, he should have been much more confident and direct. Sonaki stared at her in disbelief. He argued that if he had tried something that bold, he would have probably gotten himself into trouble immediately. Defending himself, he explained how much time and effort he had invested into writing that letter. That's when Ichizono revealed something unexpected. Hiroisan had never even opened it. She explained that he had essentially been dismissed without a second thought, and accepting that reality would make moving on easier. Then, without holding back, she began listing every flaw she could think of. She criticized his hairstyle, his fashion sense, and even his height. She complained that he always repeated the same stories, pointed out his poor grades, and mocked the messy state of his desk. She brought up how loudly he talked with friends, how awkwardly he behaved around girls, and even criticized the way he held his chopsticks. The barrage seemed endless. Sanaki stood there completely stunned as flaw after flaw was thrown at him. Then, as suddenly as it had started, Ichizono stopped. Looking slightly confused, she tried to remember what they had originally been discussing. After thinking for a moment, she smiled and casually concluded that being rejected was perfectly natural for him, so there was no reason to be upset. That was the final straw. Unable to endure any more, Sanaki let out a cry filled with frustration and despair. Turning toward her, he demanded to know why she felt the need to insult him so thoroughly. Ichizono blinked in surprise. She insisted that she had only been trying to encourage him. She even added his bad temper to the growing list of flaws before admitting that she had gotten involved because she felt partly responsible. Taking a deep breath, Sanaki tried to compose himself. He accepted that there was nothing he could do about the unread letter, but that wasn't what hurt most. Fighting back tears, he explained the true source of his pain. If Hirosen was going to reject him, then she should have done it herself. Sending a friend instead was what really wounded him. Seeing him on the verge of crying again, Ichizono suddenly seemed to come up with an idea. If he was that upset, then he should rise above Hiroi-san. Pointing directly at him, she declared that he needed to make Hiroi-san regret rejecting him. Her goal was simple: make Hiroi-san think she should have accepted that confession. Sanaki looked completely lost. How was he supposed to do something like that? Ichizono immediately had an answer. Since he was on the baseball team, he should use that to his advantage. Hiroisen liked athletic guys, so he needed to work harder and show off his best side during games. Sanaki tried to object. He reminded her that he was only a bench player and admitted that dedicating so much effort solely for revenge felt strange. Ichisono instantly shut him down. She shouted that she didn't care about excuses and warned him that if he kept thinking like that, he'd remain the same forever. Then she admitted something important. Hiroi-san hadn't treated him sincerely. But as she turned to leave, she delivered one final harsh remark. Someone as spineless as him wasn't even worth rejecting properly. Those words struck him harder than anything else. For the first time, he realized how pathetic he had allowed himself to become. From that day forward, everything changed. He began training with a level of determination that shocked everyone around him. His teammates couldn't believe the transformation. The boy who had once lacked motivation was suddenly practicing harder than anyone else. Watching the intensity in his eyes, one teammate joked that it looked like Sanaki had someone he desperately wanted revenge against. His dedication became almost frightening. During practice, he wore out every extra baseball available. The coach eventually started paying attention to him. Rain didn't stop him. Exhaustion didn't stop him. He kept running and training with relentless determination. His teammates respected his effort, though many wondered how long he could maintain such an extreme pace. But the hard work was paying off. His performances in games improved dramatically. The team began viewing him as an important player, and some even joked that he had finally started following their advice. What none of them knew was that he had a secret observer. Hidden behind a fence, Ichizono quietly watched his progress every step of the way. Then the big day arrived. The championship-level match everyone had been waiting for. Standing at the plate, Sanaki swung with everything he had. The crack of the bat echoed through the field. Perfect hit. The crowd exploded with excitement. Among the spectators, Hiroi-san cheered enthusiastically, completely amazed by what she had just witnessed. Beside her, Ichizono stared in disbelief. The hit was incredible. More importantly, it secured the team's victory. His teammates rushed toward him like he was a hero, celebrating the game-winning moment. Even the captain was already talking about the future and how they would finally avenge last year's defeat. Sanaki thanked everyone. At the same time, he apologized. He promised to continue improving. But deep inside, his real goal was entirely different. The person he wanted revenge on wasn't the opposing team. Sometime after the match, Ichizono appeared before him once again. Smiling, she handed him a letter. She explained that it had come from Hiroi-san. Sanaki froze. For a moment, he couldn't even react. Ichizono clarified that it wasn't exactly a love letter. It was more like a fan letter congratulating him on his success. With a satisfied smile, she asked whether he finally felt better. After all, he had achieved exactly what he wanted. He had gotten his revenge in spectacular fashion. Now he could choose any girl he wanted. She even joked that she would personally deliver a rejection message to Hira-san if necessary. Meanwhile, Sanaki became visibly flustered. He tried explaining that popularity was never the reason he worked so hard. Ichizono laughed. She insisted he couldn't fool her. According to her, she had understood the truth from the very beginning. His motivation had always been revenge against Hiroi-san. Seeing his reaction, Ichizono turned around and started walking away. She advised him to take a few days before making any major decisions. He deserved time to think. Then, glancing back one last time, she reminded him of something. Next time, act like a real man and never rely on a letter again. This time, Sonaki didn't answer with words. Instead, he followed her advice. Acting decisively, he stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her from behind. Ichizono immediately froze. Her eyes widened in complete shock. Speechless and bright red with embarrassment, she called him an idiot. She tried to tell him that he had the wrong person, that he was making a mistake. But Sanaki refused to let go. For once, he was completely in control. He declared that he would release her only if she admitted one thing, that he was cool. Ichizono responded with one final challenge. Bringing her face close to his, she gently kissed his cheek. Then she revealed her reasoning. If he didn't let go, she wouldn't be able to turn around and kiss him properly. And somewhere nearby, a certain friend suffered a devastating defeat. Wearing a victorious smile, Ichizono delivered one last playful tease.